Hey everyone, and welcome to the Decks of the Week, the weekly series where I showcase the top 10 best decks in Marvel Snap. And if you'd like to support my content, hitting the like button is the best thing that you can do. I would sincerely appreciate it. We just had an OTA patch, so we only have a few days of data. Things are rapidly changing, but I know that people are looking for some new decks, so we went to Untapped, we did some digging, we did some analysis, and we've got a top 10 here. But one thing worth noting here is this number 10, I have a question mark beside it, because it has a really low sample rate. It's a brand new deck that is just emerging into the meta, but it has a remarkable win rate and cube rate, so we're going to start with it. But as this gets into the hands of more players, these numbers might rapidly shift. But it is an ongoing Zoo Thanos deck, and I actually did play it live on stream during the Twitch drops, which is why I'm so tired, and it was pretty good. I actually liked it. Cull Obsidian put up massive power, you have armor, you got Coccia, a lot of defensive capabilities, and Valkyrie is a legitimate cube stealer. I really liked this deck. It ran out of space very fast, which I think is what you want with Dazzler to some degree. But when you have your stones and the Squirrel Girls and all that stuff, it did feel a little squished. But regardless, it was a pretty cool deck. I could see Squirrel Girl getting subbed out for something, but that's just me. Regardless, a really cool deck. The stats might shift slightly over the next week or so, but I just want to showcase it to you, and because it is an emerging list. We go into number 9, and it's Phoenix Force, an actual surprise here. Phoenix Force running a 52% win rate, which is very low, and also a 0.42 cube rate, which is actually amongst the best of the week. What's interesting about this, though, is once again a relatively low sample rate, and it's one of those types of decks that takes a lot of nuance and practice to play. So when I make this video and everyone, starts trying it and playing it, we're probably going to tank that win rate and the cube rate pretty hard. It takes a lot of practice to play Phoenix Force. Even myself, I am not a comfortable Phoenix Force player at all, and I play this game a lot, a hell of a lot. So if you're going to play this deck, definitely apply kind of like at least 20 games before you make judgment. Get ready to donate some cubes towards the end of this season so you can get warmed up for the ranked run to start the next, okay? But Phoenix Force running a 0.42 cube rate and a 52% win rate, a pretty good cube rate at least. We go to Miss Marvel, kind of location lockdown at number 8, 54% win rate and a 0.29 cube rate. It is a very classic deck that honestly has not changed at all and just continues to be a pretty reliable list. The addition of Storm and Jessica Jones, which is great because these are really inexpensive cards. You are running cards, of course, like Elias, which tends to be obviously a Series 5 card, as is Jeff, but generally speaking, pretty inexpensive deck. And ultimately, I do think that it's a damn capable one. It's currently one of the best Miss Marvel decks out there right now. And it's kind of interesting. Miss Marvel still is incredibly good, but has seen a reduction in play rate, leading it to be number 8 on this list. At number 7, we have Annie Hawk. Now, Elias and Darkhawk have been played together quite frequently over the past couple weeks, and in fact, it was one of the absolute top decks of the meta last week, if not the absolute top. And so now, with the change to Darkhawk being changed to a 5/4, the deck just doesn't quite perform the same, and this right now is kind of like a shoehorned, we're just going to keep doing what we did before, forget about the Zabu Synergy style deck, and well, it's a lot worse. It feels much worse. The 4 extra power applied to Darkhawk does not offset the additional cost, because without Zabu Synergy, you can't play it on turn 6 with another 3-drop like a Shang-Chi. So that combo potential that Zabu allowed is no longer possible with a 5-cost Darkhawk. So now it's much more analogous with Devil Dinosaur or Ronin, but with a different condition, of course. That brings the win rate of the deck down and the cube rate plummeting from what was a fantastic one last week to a 0.23, which is like close to half. So a pretty significant nerf to Darkhawk and its viability, but Darkhawk is still good in my testing. We just haven't quite figured the deck out yet, and it's going to need a whole new style of brew. We go to number 6 here, and it's Hello Lockjaw. Now, this is one of those situations where I know people like the statistical based approach to these types of lists, but I would actually move this towards number 1 or 2 in my opinion, but it lands at number 6 because of its win rate at 54%, a very strong cube rate at 0.41. This deck actually far outperforms its numbers. A 54% win rate, it definitely feels like you're winning way more often than that by way bigger numbers, and I think that what's happening here is people, when Hela was first starting to come out on the scene, I think they were staying in games that they really shouldn't have been. They didn't really recognize the power potential of Hela. They didn't really appreciate how much power Hela could put down, even though it's random a little bit with the generation. There's just so much power there, like it's unlikely you can even straight up fight it. And so now that people are getting a little more, we'll say a little more retreat happy and be able to identify when Hela has them by the Coccia Schnuts, and then they're able to just kind of get out, right? So that reduces the win rate slightly, reduces the cube rate. But ultimately, I do think that this Hela Lockjaw deck is still strong. Lockjaw did get nerfed to a 4/5. That is a huge impact. But still, the deck just does its thing. Corvus still does its thing. Proxima does its thing. MODOK and Hela do their things. So it's still just a very capable deck in one of the absolute top of the meta and one of the most played decks in the current meta, despite coming in at number 6 from a win rate perspective. And our next deck is going to be Hawk by Night, a Darkhawk based deck that is honestly performing not as good as I would expect. A 55% win rate looks good on paper, but at a cube rate of 0.19, it's just not good enough. You want good snap and cube equity in order to kind of rise in the ranks, climb the ladder, and do what you want to do in Marvel Snap. At 0.19, it's just not good enough. I think what's happening here is the Darkhawk nerf is really being felt, not just from like Darkhawk is now vulnerable to Shang-Chi sitting there on turn 5, but the ability to play it on turn 6 with 2 cards, I know I've brought it up already, but like literally it's destroying the cube rates, right? You can't really protect the Darkhawk as effectively, so therefore it's more vulnerable and there's bigger swing opportunities for your opponent, which really drops this cube equity down when you get caught for 8 or 4 cubes by surprise, which it shouldn't be a surprise because Shang-Chi's everywhere, and Enchantress is actually making itself back into many lists as well. So you're seeing this compression of cube rate in Darkhawk based decks as people play Darkhawk like they used to. Well, they're at least trying to, and they just end up leaving it vulnerable to major counters. So unfortunately, Hawk by Night, despite being number 5 in win rate, has a pretty weak cube rate and not what I would recommend. Now, Destroy 55% and a 0.29 cube rate, again, the barometer of the meta. The change to Forge took a lot out of this deck. So the change to Forge, moving it to a 2 cost, you also have the reduction of power in Hulkbuster, and now the deck just kind of feels a lot clumsier. And ultimately, you have a deck that still works, 55% rate, it's still good, and decent cube rate at 0.29. You like to be just a little higher into that 3 range, but it's still good, right? It's still the barometer of the meta, and it seems like it's in check now. Like, my games against Destroy have felt much fairer. It doesn't feel like it can outreach, but the problem is it's not going to outreach a Hela. It's not going to outreach a lot of these vertical decks that can put like a ton of power. So you're going to see Destroy kind of fall off a little bit in meta relevance, because if it can't compete with the most popular deck like a Hela, it just doesn't go vertical enough. It doesn't go high enough at all against those decks, and Killmonger doesn't have any equity against those decks. And so you have to just do your thing to get bigger than like the Giganto that's coming out for free and stuff like that, which is supposed to be what the Lockjaw nerf is supposed to be handling, those free kind of massive value swings. But Destroy at number 4, good win rate, decent cube rate, still good, but the nerfs are being felt. There's no question about it. And anybody who plays a lot of Destroy will know that that Forge change was pretty damn significant. That takes us to the top 3, and Thanos Lockjaw still stays near the top at 56% win rate. But again, the change to Lockjaw making a 4/5 right now, requiring the use of Black Swan in order to make the stones free, so you can place stone into Lockjaw on turn 4 to at least start rotating things. The snap equity, the cube equity is just through the floor, 0.17. That is awful compared to what it used to be. So from a win rate perspective, the deck still performs, but it's not putting up the cube equity. It's just not. And the nerf to Lockjaw being really felt here, and you can see it because of the inclusion of Black Swan, right? You want to start rotating things through that Lockjaw ASAP. So, I mean, it's looking pretty rough, but at a number 3, it's still a good deck, but it's not what it used to be. And that takes us to this new emerging deck that is a lockdown based shell at a 56% win rate and a 0.33 cube rate, and this is legit. I actually really like this deck a lot. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a pretty cool design, and it is Thanos still, but now it's the removal of Lockjaw, and we're back towards the classic, well, I'm gonna time stone on turn 3, and on turn 4 I'm gonna drop Professor X, and I got the Jeff for the backup, and I got the Psylocke and whatever, right? It's a ramp based lockdown deck. It's back now. Now that Lockjaw has been neutered, We have people looking to see how they can utilize Thanos, and we're back to this. And so ultimately, I mean, no surprises here. I kind of, said it was a new deck, but it's new over the last couple weeks, I guess, because the Lockjaw version of these decks have definitely been preferred in the last little while up until the nerf. So it's performing damn well, legit one of the absolute top in the game right now, and I guess War Machine can't come soon enough. That brings us to the #1 deck in Marvel Snap right now. With all the changes coming down, a middle-of-the-pack deck last week has climbed to the top at a 57% win rate and a strong cube rate at 0.33. It's Heli Discard. Helicarrier running that Collector gives you a lot of value. Collector also loves Swarm being replicated in the hand. And don't forget that Helicarrier gives you some optionality as to what you might be able to play, but just Modocking the whole hand and letting Morbius get absolutely massive is just fine too. This deck does a lot of interesting things, does not have the random side of Hela, but does utilize Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight to good effectiveness. Regardless, guys, those are your top 10 best decks in Marvel Snap right now. We're in a week of transition with the OTA just coming out. I hope you found this helpful. Hit the like button if you like to support my content. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and we'll see you in that next Marvel Snap video.